Support for Lab Out Loud is provided by NSTA, the National Science Teaching Association. Find out more about what NSTA has to offer at nsta.org. You're listening to Lab Out Loud, Science for the Classroom and beyond. Our guest today started her work in science communication by wondering if trust in science could be improved if scientists could reach out to a wider and more diverse audience.
Getting scientists out of our bubbles, talking to people who are not across the hall from us in the same science lab, that would help. And so I started with classrooms because I thought it would be kind of the easiest in to get a nice cross-section of the population. It's really, really hard to have science communication that doesn't just reach people who are already interested in science. And so I thought that this might be a way of doing that.
That's up next on Lab Out Loud, but first I'm your co-host Dale Basler.
And I'm Brian Bartell.
We got Skype, Zoom, Google Meet, GoToMeeting, Microsoft Teams. Anything, we've been Zooming
FaceTime?
And video... FaceTime. Ooh, there's another one. We've been video conferencing for months now, and our guest was doing it way before that, like lots of people. But she was doing it with a program to connect scientists to classrooms called Skype a Scientist. Our guest today is Sarah McAnulty. Let's meet Sarah.
My name is Sarah McAnulty. I am a squid biologist, and I am also the Executive Director of Skype a Scientist, which is a science education nonprofit based in Philadelphia.
So that's now, right.
Wait a second.
I remember we talked about the squid biologist before.
Yeah.
How do you get much action for squid in Philadelphia? Is that
not anymore? So I was a more active squid biologist when I lived in Connecticut when I was doing graduate school, and now I used to be a squid biologist that did science communication on the side, and now I am a science communicator that does squid biology on the side. Really flip the script on that one. So when there's not a pandemic, I will help with collecting squid, but right now there is a pandemic, so I haven't seen a living squid since February of 2020, which is officially the longest I have gone in 15 years. Squidless. Yeah, it's really sad, but hopefully one day I will see a squid again. Might not be till next summer.
You're going through squid withdrawal.
It's true. It's really sad. I just had to put a bunch of squid art in my house and hope that it works out. Yeah.
So, maybe on a side note there, we have a lot of scientists in that same boat, really. Maybe not a real boat, but in the sense that, they might be prohibited from or field work is really challenging for them.
Oh, yeah. That came up last season, too, like the ant scientist and all those things. They're kind of grounded in some ways.
So how do scientists adapt for that? Other than going squidless.
A lot of times scientists will have things that they've backburnered for when either their field season is over or just they don't want to do. This is honestly me speaking from experience. Not wanting to do it and then doing the more fun thing first and then getting back to it when you get back to it. So I think a lot of papers that were sitting unedited are getting out during this time. Grants are getting written and data analysis is happening. We're working through various backlogs of stuff. I think that's one thing that you can do with this kind of not downtime, but away from your field work time. But some are just stuck for a little bit, although it's definitely getting
housekeeping.
Better. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, we
exactly.
saw people doing how many people posted pictures of cleaning the floorboards of their house or this is the scientific equivalent. All right, what data needs to be analyzed?
I guess we'll tighten all the screws on our aquarium system. We'll change out the washers in our, whatever. So, little things that don't always happen until they have to are now happening. So, yeah, alas.
Well, exactly. We hope that the world returns a little bit more to normal as fast as it can.
For sure.
But in the meanwhile, the pandemic has actually, if my guess is correct, has actually helped out with Skype a Scientist. Can you first tell us a little bit about Skype a Scientist? I think the name gives a lot away, but what is it, and have you been helped by the pandemic?
Yeah, happy to explain. So Skype a Scientist is a program that matches scientists with any group of people that wants to talk to a scientist. Most of those groups are classrooms. We also serve libraries, clubs, scout troops, book clubs, groups of adults, pretty much anybody who wants to talk to a scientist. Also homeschool families. We opened it up to families during the pandemic as well. So anybody who needs a scientist in their life, we are here to help them out totally for free. You don't have to use Skype. You can use Zoom or whichever platform you like best. We serve about 10,000 groups a year. In 2020, though, man, we served more than that. We served 11,661 groups, which was pretty great. So I don't want to say the pandemic helped us in any way, but we did have a lot of folks switching from in-person teaching to online, and they were just looking for something to kind of jazz up that online learning. And so a lot of folks signed up to our program for that. The one major benefit, I guess, of everybody switching to online learning over the last year and a half is that people are a lot more comfortable with video conferencing than they used to be. So I used to really, really encourage our scientists and teachers to have like a tech check test call before they actually do the session. And now people kind of know what they're doing. And so in that sense, I think our program is less intimidating than it used to be, for folks who may not have, used Skype or Zoom or what have you, in the classroom before.
Yeah, I imagine you have a whole group of new participants that you probably would have never gained access to because we just all dove into the ocean of video conferencing together.
Yeah, I think for sure. What's really been interesting is that so typically our fall semester is bigger than our spring semester, but in 2020, I think it's the beginning of the school year, everybody's has a lot of energy and everybody's ready to go. You just had 3 months off to decompress, and then you sign up to a new program. And then in 2020, we had a massive spring semester, because everybody was switching, of course, during that time. It was pretty much March was a whirlwind month over here. And since, I've had to put a lot more effort into telling people about our program to bring in new folks, because currently, I'm sure you two are feeling this too. We're all pretty zoomed out, and the thought of adding one more Zoom call, even if it is to talk to a scientist, is like, oh my God, if I have to be on another conference call.
I was wondering if you'd get that kind of attitude towards it.
Yeah, I think we've found that a little bit, but I'm hoping that, schools are opening back up now. I'm hoping we'll get more face-to-face time. That's complicated with kids being in danger, not being able to be vaccinated. It's a real, a complicated topic, but I'm hoping that at least people are less Zoom fatigued, perhaps.
Sure.
We'll see how much longer until people are sent back home this fall.
Yeah.
But even in person, it might be like 2 to 3 weeks, and like, okay, I need like a Friday afternoon. We need to Skype a scientist to just to give a different pace to something else.
Yes,
and
for sure.
There are going to be many educators who are not as not even like they know how to do this, of course, but they're just not as intimidated like doing a video chat. They have the equipment and they have the kind of experience to actually like not be afraid of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was always a significant population who prior to this thought that was for somebody else. Like that's not that I couldn't be the expert for that. I'll get so-and-so to come and help me do it, but I won't be. And now that's just it always fascinates me when I think about that, like how we've elevated. Like this crisis has elevated everybody in certain areas. It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
I want to come back to the name. You said you can use anything else. Is there any ties to like Microsoft and Skype or is it just a name?
It's just a name. So when I started this program, I was just I was a graduate student trying to solve a problem that I saw in the world that I thought I could fix relatively straightforwardly. I didn't think it was going to be my career. I didn't think it was going to get as big as it did. So I was like, well, Skype and scientist both start with the letter S. But I have been in contact with Microsoft, and they are like, well, you actually make us look good. So we're happy to have you use our name. It's free advertising. So I'm like, okay, great. Now, of course, I think Skype is used a lot less now than it was back in 2017. But whatever, we're sticking with it. This is our name. This is
I think that's where Brian and I are too. We do the podcast via Skype because that's what was around when we started.
Exactly.
That was the player.
Skype was the, go to like online not video conference. It was just audio at first. Like that was the place. It was the name, sort of
the thing. It was kind of
like Kleenex.
I was about to say like Kleenex. I was like, I really felt at the time that the word Skype meant more than just the computer program Skype. And that has kind of changed a bit, but people know what we meant. Right. Exactly, like Googling something.
It's working.
Yeah, but it's become built into Windows 10 and 11 as part of like the default, so you can it's become a lot easier too. So maybe we'll see a resurgence in Skype.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
So the last time we talked was in 2019, but you started this in 2017?
Yes, in January 2017 is when I started. Yep.
You mentioned that in March of 2020 that there was this massive uptick in that spring semester.
Yes.
What is massive? Like, can you give us an idea of what is a lot?
What's
how
a
many
lot?
numbers we're
for sure.
Yeah. What are we dealing with here? Yeah.
So typically we had like between 4,000 and 5,000 classrooms signing up in a given semester. And we had 6,500 or a little bit more than that in the spring semester. And most of those classrooms were squished into March, April, which was
into like the last quarter.
Right, because that's when things were happening. And that wasn't a problem at all. That was great because we have a lot of scientists in our program that are pretty much just there as a buffer, which is super important because we need to make sure that when a classroom signs up, let's say they want to talk to a bee biologist, we want to make sure that we have enough people kind of in the wiggle room space in our database that we can get them actually exactly what they need. And so on average, about 75% of our scientists get matched in a given semester. I'd like to see that closer to 85, just so we're getting use out of the scientists that are volunteering their time. But there's going to always be some scientists that don't get matched because we need some extra, so we can always accommodate the teachers that sign up. So having 2,000 classrooms sign up in a month might sound like a deluge, but it is a deluge that we are really, really happy to help with.
Did you have an uptick in scientists?
A little bit. But we were never in a situation where I was like, oh no, we won't be able to meet the needs. We were always totally fine. So I think we did, but the classroom uptick was a little stronger than our scientist uptick. But we did have scientists that were like, well, I used to have to go, to work, and now I'm stuck at home and I can't do my PCR, my Western blot, my whatever. I'm just like staring at the wall here. So might as well, this is a great time to do outreach. And it's like, okay, perfect. Well, come on over.
Dale and I have found that when we started the podcast, that reaching out to scientists was actually a lot easier than we thought it was. And there's a lot of scientists who have a goal or a need to fulfill that science outreach within grants or within their positions or something like that. And is that still true? Do we see that a lot? Or are we taxing scientists too much in asking them to talk to us?
You are not asking scientists too much. So when many scientists are applying for funding to do their work, there are two, at least in the United States, there are two major government agencies that you do this. There's more than two, but the two that I generally think of first are the National Institute of Health and the National Science Foundation. And the National Science Foundation, when you apply for money, you have to say, here's my scientific plan, and here's what we call my broader impacts. And so broader impacts involves how your work or how your career is affecting society more broadly. And so that's where they want to see scientists developing programs, or at least talking to K through 12 students or people who aren't scientists at all. And so it's really, really important for their professional development and their career to have some time spent on that. There's a wide range in the amount of time that different scientists want to be spending on that. But at least if you're applying for the National Science Foundation grant funds money, you have to be doing it at least a little bit.
Okay.
I think that's an important thing for teachers to convey to students too. The idea that that's required in their funding, but that's why we learn science also, is to, have this broader impact on society and people's lives. And so, don't get that idea lost. And not only is that true from a teaching of science thing, it's also true for scientists. They need to make that connection to that mission too.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Sarah, you mentioned that when you started Skype a Scientist, you were trying to solve a larger problem. Was it as simple as I wanted to play scientist matchmaker, or what else did you have in mind there?
Yeah, so I over the course of the last 10 years, I just kind of seen this increasing lack of trust in science. That was really pretty disconcerting to me. And that was before the pandemic and before, a lot of things happened. And I just saw, a lack of trust in, it was vaccines then, that was a real concern. Yeah. And man, it's vaccines now. And I was just like, man, I just think that a lot of what's happening, the polarization broadly in our country, in our world, that's kind of, in a sense, caused by us all sort of going to our silos and only talking to people who are exactly like us. We need to be talking more. There just needs to be more communication that's happening between groups. And so I thought that getting scientists out of our bubbles, talking to people who are not across the hall from us in the same science lab, that would help. And so I started with classrooms because I thought it would be kind of the easiest in to get a nice cross-section of the population. When you're in science class, you're there because you have to be, not necessarily because you like science. So that would be different from a group showing up at your local science museum, or a group that would voluntarily show up to, for example, like a science cafe, like one of these nights where scientists will give a talk on their research at a bar. It's really, really hard to have science communication that doesn't just reach people who are already interested in science. And so I thought that this might be a way of doing that. And we've seen from the testimonials that have come back from teachers that it's working. We're reaching students who may not have quite realized what science encompasses, and that science could be more interesting than they had perceived science to be before. We've had a lot of testimonials come in where the teacher will say, man, this student was in my class and wasn't turning in assignments and wasn't really engaged with science, and now they're super engaged, their grades are coming up, they're showing up, and that's not like a one-off testimonial that I've gotten. I've gotten some version of that story repeatedly, and that is that's great. That's what we're trying to do. I'm not necessarily trying to encourage all of these students to go into science, but I want them to be comfortable with science. I want them to not immediately freeze up or get intimidated when they think about science or approaching learning about science in their adult lives.
So do you find that the recipients of these classrooms are science classrooms, or do you find that talking to scientists can exist within a history class or a math class?
They can absolutely exist in non-science classes. I think the vast majority of classes that are currently signing up are science classes, but we had an art history class sign up. We had a music class. This was, I think, a community college class that was focused on music, sign up to talk to an audiologist. There's a lot, science permeates more than just the laboratory classes. It's kind of everywhere, particularly in history, but really everywhere, from art to everything. So having the experience of your students talking to a scientist is not a science teacher exclusive experience. And we really ask that our scientists be kind of open to whatever the needs of this classroom is that they get matched with.
As you think about the growth that you've had in the last couple of years, and since we talked to you even in 2019, What have you done to respond to the demands or the growing demands of Skype a Scientist? Have you had any other offerings?
Yeah, so we've expanded our program in a couple ways. The matching program works pretty well. I think at this point it's kind of a well-oiled machine. So we just want more people to know that we exist, to know that we're available to them. So that part of the program hasn't changed too terribly much since then, but is going strong. We want more.
I feel like you need like an app, like like
Beaker,
BEAKR or something.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we honestly joked when we were first developing the algorithm. Me and my best friend, Dr. David Jenkins. He is a computer scientist / biology beats computers up at AstraZeneca in Boston. But anyway, we were joking that we're like the Tinder of science communication. Like it's kind of silly to think about, but at the end of the day, a matching algorithm is a matching algorithm, and we are a little bit that. So if we had,
so sorry to sidetrack you there. Sorry,
it's okay. I was like about to say I forget what the original question was. Right. So in addition to our matching program, we also do a weekly live stream series during the North American school year that's called Skype a Scientist Live. Once a week, we bring in. It's great. So we bring in a scientist a week where the audience members ask questions. They type them in, and then I ask them out loud. We also have an ASL interpreter available at all those sessions, so that everybody can get access to the knowledge. And we just talk about whatever people want to know about. We introduce who they are, what they do, why they like it. And then it's an open conversation for about 45 minutes.
Is that an open conversation, or is that more like a webinar kind of if we're using our lingo we learned over the last couple of years?
It is a Zoom webinar, yes. So students can, or whoever shows up, can type in questions. And then we keep it safe, because one thing that we've also learned, unfortunately, in the last 2 years is that Zoom bombing is really dangerous to have your students present for. And so we keep it pretty locked down so that anybody can submit a question, but the whole audience present at the webinar doesn't see what the audience is typing in until I click answered, and then the audience sees it. And so it's protected in that way. So your questions get answered because I'm the one that reads through them and asks them, but it's not so open that it's open to abuse.
Sure.
So that's why that's designed
Can you
that
go
way.
back and listen? Like if you couldn't make one of the ones that we missed, can you go back and listen to a previous or see a previous one?
Absolutely. Yep. On youtube.com/Skype a Scientist.
Nice.
There's like 100 or 200 on there at this point. Lots and lots.
I'm looking at the schedule. Dancing Geologists, October 1st. I need to know more about that. So she's a geologist and also really interested in science communication and also dancing. And she just likes to kind of show herself in her full life form, not just like I am a scientist from 9 to 5 and then from 6 to 8 p.m. I dance, and and those two are it's all part of her. And so she really shows her full self as her on her social media and all that. And so, I'm really excited to talk to her. I missed it. How long do those sessions go?
45 minutes. So not
45 minutes.
Not super long. We keep it just enough to be engaging, and then we cut it off before it gets too long.
Mm-hmm. You have some other events too, and the one that caught my eye is After Hours Trivia for Adults.
Yes, it's so fun. So once a week on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have, science trivia. It's 5 rounds of trivia that you can either play with your friends or you can show up and make some new friends. It started at the beginning of the pandemic because I used to run science trivia out in bars up in the Northeast United States, but obviously we couldn't meet in real life anymore. So we switched to online, and the community that has started to really grow around that event is just a really lovely bunch of science dorks. You don't need to be a scientist to have fun at that event, as long as you have some interest in science. A really lovely
bunch of science dorks. I resemble that. Yes.
That's good. Yeah, it's just a wholesome bunch. We have a lot of different people from a lot of different places that show up. We have one zookeeper in Australia that she wakes up Friday morning and logs into trivia.
Oh, wow.
It's just great. We learn about everything from animals to space to everything else. And the nice thing is that the people who show up to that event are really science interested. And so maybe we'll mention a given topic in a question. And then at the end, someone will be like, by the way, in round 2, you mentioned blah, 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 blah. I'd like to give you a little more detail. Or like, I actually worked on that space mission. Or, you know, I have one of those animals at the zoo and I can show it to you today. It's like, it's really wild, how much depth we have at that group. And so even if, I mean, don't let that intimidate you. You can show up and lurk and not talk at all. But, it's really just, it's like something I'm kind of proud of, having existed as part of our program. Yeah.
So you have dates for that going through September, but will it go on beyond that then?
Yes. The idea is that it'll just keep going. I just have the next month, like
you go monthly out.
But yeah.
Sure.
That'll go until who knows when.
So teachers can go to skypeascientist.com to set up for their classroom during the day, and then in the evening bring some science teacher friends along and participate in the trivia.
Yes, for sure. We've had teams of science teachers actually do super well, because a lot of times science teachers, they know all the science and whereas a scientist will know one type of science super, super deep. And then if you have a bunch of different types of teachers, you tend to kick butt because you know a lot about a lot of different things.
Oh my gosh. I'm looking at the back catalog of the live ones.
Oh yeah.
Science of Star Wars. There's this is also fun just going back in time here.
Who comes up with the questions then?
I do.
Okay.
Which means, so I've read like 107 books this year, because I have to know about a lot of stuff. So I'll read a book about bees, and then there will be a round all about bees from like the coolest facts I learned from the bee book.
Nice.
I'd like, you know, the great courses that are like available from libraries and stuff. So I listened to, like a mythology one, because I try to really loosely define science. Try to have like one pop culture round as well. So that might be sci-fi movies. It might be, comic books, or, in the case of this round coming up, it's all about mythology. And, we kind of think of mythology as like a way of understanding the world, and science is a way of understanding the world. So, we try to have it not all be hard science facts, a little bit of something else in each event. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that'll be one too.
If we go back to the classroom and a teacher wants to get started with having a scientist in their classroom, aside from, setting up, like knowing you can do the technical side, because I know you've talked about you have some tech requirements. What else should they prepare for? Is there maybe things that they do leading up to it?
Yeah.
So get the connection.
Here's kind of how it works and what is suggested on top of the base of how it works. So when you sign up for a scientist and you get matched, the scientist will likely send you some things associated with what they do. They might send you like a TED Talk or a podcast episode or a YouTube video or a blog post they wrote, something. And make sure that you have a handle on what it is that they actually know about. Because sometimes folks will, for example, try to get matched with me. I'm a squid biologist, but they might hear squid biologist and think marine biologist broadly, and then might expect that I'll also know the answers to like algal bloom questions or whale migration questions. And sometimes I do, but sometimes I definitely do not. And so getting a sense of like the scope of what your scientist is really an expert in really helps the session be the most productive and valuable, because then you're getting the most valuable knowledge from the expert on, bee legs or whatever it is. Scientists sometimes focus on wildly specific things. And so getting a sense of what that is great, and making sure your students also have a sense of what that is. And my biggest piece of advice, this is in the email that you get when you get a match, but I just want to reiterate it. Like, don't be afraid to tell your scientists that they used a word that you don't know, because some of our scientists do science communication like this all the time. They do it once a week. It's one of their favorite things to do. Or maybe they have kids at home, so they know what a fifth grader knows. They know what words to use with a fifth grader. And then this might be the first time that they're talking to someone about their work who isn't a scientist. And so they might use like phosphorylation, and you're like, excuse me, what? And you saying what is not, you're helping the scientist get better at communicating, and you're also understanding what the heck they're talking about. And so that's actually really mutually beneficial, to be sure to, this is a no shame zone around here, to not know a word. Just ask. Just be open to communication.
Do you have like a top tier level of scientists that have you've hit 50 classrooms or something and they just keep coming back? Or
we have kicked around the idea of having, so on our scientist search tool, you have their name, their time zone, how many sessions they're available for, and what they study. But I kind of want to add another column that's got a great review from a teacher. Because when at the end of the semester, we send a survey out to our teachers, and I ask them to write down the names of any scientists who just blew them away, who are amazing. And I'd like to have a little symbol for that, and a symbol for has done over 50 sessions or what have you.
Oh yeah.
And that is something we have not yet built into the system, but it's something that we're hoping to build in the next year. I don't want to commit to a timeline, but because our bioinformatics guy has a full-time job on top of helping us with this. But But yeah, I would love to have that happen.
We always joke with our guests that when they come on 5 times, we're going to give them a robe, like the 5 Timers Club back from Saturday Night Live. Steve Martin, you get a robe once you do it 5 times. Everyone,
exactly, yeah.
Well, we did send Fred T-shirts now.
That's true.
Yeah, that was. I also noticed you added some of these on YouTube. I noticed there's a section for ASL interpreted Skype a Scientist.
Yes, that started during the pandemic
always
as well.
Available?
Pretty much always going forward. So that started during the pandemic because an ASL interpreter that worked for a school in Portland, Oregon was like, I'm at home. I can't really do my job from here. So if you want someone for the sessions, I'll show up. Her name's Erin Fell. She is amazing. I feel so grateful that she reached out to us because it's something that we wanted to build in anyway. And then she just sort of fell into our lap. So, she's the best. So she's at her or one of her colleagues, now goes to those sessions. So we have ASL interpretation. And if Erin has to go back into the school this fall, we'll find somebody to get that ASL.
You said that came out of the pandemic, and it's another one of those examples of, we really did see that with accessibility, sort of really
the need for accessibility, first of all.
Yeah, it really showed itself even in new avenues and how we could address those areas.
Yeah, and I think what was nice is that a lot of people were learning this at the same time, which made that the awareness of needing to do it more visible to a lot of people, and tutorials coming out all the time to do it. So people who maybe thought, I really should add captioning to all my videos or what have you, there was no excuse after that to not know how to do it because there were so many people explaining how to do it. And I think that was really, really great.
Mm-hmm. Do you have plans for other features in the future?
At this point, we would need more funding to do anything other than what we're doing. We do have a new program, and then this will be our last new program. I said this the last time I started a new program, so we'll see. We'll see if that's actually true. But we started a collaboration with the Free Library of Philadelphia, where it's a live stream series, a lot like Skype a Scientist Live, which happen at 1 p.m. and are for kids. These are at 7 p.m. and the target audience is adults. We talk about one sort of world problem or topic. Then we talk about how science has helped us understand that problem or topic. And then we bring in an activist to talk about what is happening, like how individuals are making this problem better. And then you'll be given action items to leave with so that you can go into the world equipped to help fix that problem. In October, that'll be the opioid epidemic. We have a scientist who studies opioids, and then we have an activist who helps with a lot of different opioid dependency issues, including getting naloxone, which is that if someone is overdosing, you can give them this and it will revive them. Getting that into the hands of friends and family or users themselves. And so that is awesome. And then we'll have some, of course, action items. And then in September, it's going to be a little lighter. We're just going to be talking about sleep and memory. And you'll be left with action items on how to make your sleep better, including, a lot of us know what we're supposed to do, but this will be a reminder.
It's not always go to bed earlier. Yeah.
It's not always go to bed earlier. Yeah, but put your phone down a half hour before bed or what have you. I don't actually know what the action items will be yet. Those will come from our scientists, but
Sure.
Yeah, so that's new and happening, and you can find all of the event information on our website, skypeascientist.com. All of our events and our matching program is free. The only thing that costs money is the trivia, and that is how part of the way that we afford to run the program.
Yeah, I was wondering that. You mentioned funding, and I also see you can do a T-shirt and totes too.
You can, yes.
But how are you funded?
Through small donations, almost exclusively.
Okay.
Wow. So if you can support us at patreon.com/skypeascientist, or just donate directly. There's a link for that on our website where it says donate. You can click and support us. It is extremely, extremely appreciated. The average donation to us is like $11. So it's a lot of small donors that together make us possible. So we really appreciate every single person who supports us.
And then you have some hilarious T-shirts like pipettes and
yeah, pipettes, bees, tardigrades, the full spectrum of stuff. Yeah.
So you're looking for, science teachers out there. If you're looking for, I must say, as I'm looking through this, if you're looking for a unique science T-shirt that you haven't seen before, like the tardigrade one, that's pretty clever, and I like the snail one.
Thank you. That was our board member Julia designed that.
Yeah.
I do see on Twitter, like there's a lot of science Twitter that has like a nerdy shirt Friday or a science T-shirt Friday. So
yeah,
here you go. Here's a source for that.
Perfect.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. We wish you and Skype a Scientist the best in this coming school year, and we hope that the service is utilized no matter what happens and whatever scenario we find ourselves in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and everything in between.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Lab Out Loud. If you'd like to learn more about some of the things discussed in this episode or previous episodes, you can find show notes at our website, laboutloud.com. If you have a guest idea or a future topic that you'd like to see on Lab Out Loud, go to our contact page and send us a message. Also, you can subscribe to Lab Out Loud on your favorite podcasting app, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you like to find podcasts. While you're there, leave us a review and rating. Your input helps others find our show. Thanks again for listening.